we're diving deep into a debate that split fans for decades. So, from the streets of Tokyo and Shibuya to the heart of Gotham City and Metropolis, we're comparing manga versus comics. But not just who's cooler, but which one is actually better. So, if you don't know, this all started honestly about a week ago or so. DC Comics president Jim Lee, who, if you don't know who Jim Lee is, not only is he one of the most renowned artists of all time, but like I mentioned, he's DC Comics president, so he's really important when it comes to the comic book industry as a whole. But I'm going to pull up the tweet here. So it says DC Comics president admits that Japanese manga makes him question what is missing in Western comics. It's not just hero stories, there's a much wider range of genres, said Jim Lee, adding he's very happy manga is succeeding as it gives me a goal to aim for. So when I initially read that, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool that Jim Lee is giving manga their credit. But I saw a lot of people were having discourse and comments about which one is better, manga or comics, and kind of dissing the other one. And then it just made me think, you know what? Gotta get my input. Being that I'm a big comic book fan and manga fan, I decided to make this video here. So I'm going to talk about some of the pros and cons I have with each. And even though it's probably not right to compare the two, what's the fun in that? I'm just going to go ahead and give you my thoughts on which one I think is better. So let's go ahead and get right into the video. Starting off with comics. So the comic book industry is very near and dear to my heart. And one of the things I love most about comics is the fact that it gives us characters we get to grow with. Now, my personal, probably favorite comic book hero of all time is the character of Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing or Robin, whichever one you want to go with. But Dick Grayson has been around for a very long time, almost as long as Batman. So we've gotten so many incredible stories about Robin or with Robin. And I don't think those stories would have been the same if he hasn't been around for as long as he's been. So, like I said, nostalgia is important when it comes to this. Not only do we have this ongoing nostalgia whenever Dick Grayson shows up on the screen, but you also get to still see this character grow and change. He's not confined to the limits of a certain time frame of storytelling. He's able to grow and continue to improve each and every day. Like imagine if Dick Grayson was only around for like 10 chapters or 20 chapters. We would have never gotten to see the Judas contract storyline or see him evolve and become Nightwing. Like all these stories together made him the hero he is, to the point in recent years he's been the leader of the Justice League. Look how far he's come. Sure, it might have taken longer than you expected, but the fact that we got to see this hero grow over time and multiple generations of people got to see a character that they all are familiar with evolve. Like that's something really special. And that's just one character. Even on the Marvel side, you have characters like Spider-Man. And for better or for worse, I know Spider-Man comics have been in pretty hot water lately, but for better or for worse, we've seen Peter Parker Spider-Man thrive over generations of comics. I mean, Spider-Man is arguably the biggest superhero of all time, maybe behind Batman or Superman, but we've gotten to see pretty much every evolutionary stage of Peter Parker's life. But he's still a hero. He's still having new storylines. He's still developing as a character. It doesn't just stop once he reaches the age of 30. He still has the potential to grow and change and evolve into something different. And the idea the comics give us the opportunity to see characters we love in every era really just kind of shines and hones in on the fact that these are important characters. Not only are these characters important, something that I also have to mention that a lot of people kind of use as flack against comic books, but I think it's actually a strength to it, has to be the fact that there are multiple writers and artists that come along and do these characters. Now, of course, you never know what you're going to truly get, but not only do you have new artists coming in who pretty much can help add or change to the direction of the story itself, but you also have these writers that can just come up with unique and crazy storylines that you probably would have never expected. To the point, we have so many amazing storylines for Batman, and they're all written by incredibly different talent. And I don't know if it ever would have been the same if you just had one person writing Batman. The character wouldn't have lasted as long, to be honest, but the character also had this opportunity to grow, able to put so many different ideals and motivations and just kind of thoughts into these characters when you have multiple people writing them. I do agree to a bit that sometimes you don't have the writer on the project long enough. Sometimes it seems like as soon as they get into the project, their contract comes up and now they're going to get a new writer in. And a new writer can kind of pretty much backtrack everything that happened previously. But I think that honestly happens less times than often. So that is something that comes with it. And you can't beat the feeling of just knowing that your favorite writer or artist are going to be teaming up to tackle one of your favorite heroes. Whenever you see those headlines, it's just perfection. So you can't really, it's just one of those moments where being a comic book fan just hits home, you know? And honestly, I'm not against it at all. And kind of piggybacking off of that, focusing a little bit more on the art, sometimes it's just really cool to see characters you know and love in a different art style. So, Batman, whenever we think of Batman, we think of the design of the character, but in terms of how the art for the character looks, it can range from different eras, mainly depending on what you grew up with or maybe your favorite series. But overall, you're able to see Batman in these different mediums and he looks different, but it's the same. And I think that's honestly kind of amazing because manga, unfortunately, doesn't really have it the same way. You typically have one writer and one artist who's sometimes the same person writing and drawing this character for dozens of years. We'll get to that when it comes, but you're able to see Flash written and drawn in so many different ways, but you still know that that's the character, the Flash. The idea that your favorite character can be drawn by someone new and they can add new takes or maybe new designs or just even use an art style that you never considered really kind of drives home. And you know what? That's another thing too. We're talking about just the big two in comics right here. But when people refer to the comic book industry, they're referring to the comic book industry, not just Marvel and DC. There's so many independent studios out there like IDW or Image Comics or Dark Horse, you name it. And there's so many different projects that those studios offer. Some are ongoing series and some are self-contained stories that are just phenomenal. Like one of my personal favorite comics of all time is Descender by Jeff Lemire. That is a self-contained story that is just perfection. Like the artwork is astounding. The characters are just heavily driven, and the conflict that's going on in this kind of galactic space is just incredible. So yes, this is my plug-in. If you haven't read Descender, go ahead and do that now. But besides that, that is still a comic, but it's self-contained. So when people talking about comics being ongoing and that being a problem to it, sure, I get that to a bit. But those are just the main two. And the reason for that is because those stories have continuity. They have ongoing characters. So even though, let's just say the Guardians of the Galaxy, you might not have an ongoing run, you still know the Guardians of the Galaxy exists within the Marvel universe and they're going to show up again at some point. So yes, it can feel kind of hard to catch up, but I feel like at the same time, that's if you just want a definite ending in your story. So I can see how you might be kind of off put about being into the comic book space. But I challenge you, instead of thinking about the character's story ending, just think about this story for the character ending. I don't want to live in an era where Spider-Man is just done being Spider-Man. There's no more Spider-Man comics. I would rather be able to look back and know that we're getting new Spider-Man stories, but his older stories have been closed. That we're not reopening or revisiting those storylines unless we're truly adding something definitively new to that story. But I just like to be able to go back and read Craven's Last Hunt sometimes, beginning to end, and that's still one solid story. Sure, sometimes what happens later can kind of taint your opinion on the story that you're reading. That's only if you allow it to. I still like to enjoy those moments in time and just read those storylines over and over and over again. And it honestly doesn't get any tiring at all. And I think that's the beauty of comics. So when we're talking about Marvel and DC, or even look at the Invincible universe. The Invincible universe is literally like multiple stories in Image Comics, and it kind of worked. You had so many different characters within the Image storylines coming together in this Invincible universe, or even their current massive universe. They have new characters that are up and rising all together in the same continuity. And honestly, I think it really kind of adds to the story just knowing that at any moment, one of your favorite heroes from another title could just pop up. But that's enough glazing about comics there. Let's go ahead and shift over to the manga side. And the first thing I have to give manga their props for are personalized stories. I think what puts manga above comics for sure in certain aspects is the fact that these stories are written by one person. And I know that's kind of contradictory to what I just mentioned, how having a bunch of writers and artists is pretty much great for the comic book industry. I think for manga is different. It's like these stories are someone's life work. Like I can't imagine being a One Piece fan, reading One Piece, and just knowing that someone else is going to come in and write for Oda. Like it just wouldn't be the same story. These stories are just impactful. They're important, and they're honestly a legacy for a lot of these people. These writers, these manga creators really put their life's work and blood, sweat, and tears into these stories. And when you're reading these stories, you're really seeing representation of the artists that you're coming to read. More so than you would in comics, because, like I mentioned, this is their life's work. They've been working on this for 20 plus years, probably. And even when the series is over, they're still adding more content or still drawing these characters or still involved. I mean, look at Taisei Kubo with Bleach. Bleach has been over for a while now. We have the new anime out with Thousand Year Blood War. We still get so much artwork from Taisei Kubo with these characters because this is his passion. These are the characters he loves. Sure, sometimes you have manga artists move on after they create a project, but at the same time, they always go back to their roots. And I think these stories are incredible because of the opportunity for these stories to be told by a single person over a extended period of time. With that, it also comes with consistent art and story. You don't have to worry about the tone of your story shifting or changing too often. And you don't have to worry about the art style. Whether you really love this art style or you're just indifferent or don't, at the very least, you know what you're going to get every time you open an issue. Well, another thing the comics has an edge over, kind of piggyback off into the beginning of this video, is the fact that they are in color. I think adding color to comic books really enhances it, not only just for a visual aspect, but it allows it just to feel more fleshed out. But the reason manga is so successful without color is because of the art style. A lot of the art is honestly just superior to Western comics, and they're able to get away with a lot more by doing a lot less. They don't have the color into their issues each time, and they're able to drop them more frequently. I mean, typically comic book issues drop once a month or so, whereas you're getting a new manga issue every week. So yeah, they don't have the color, or maybe they might not have certain penciling done in proper time, but it's going to be consistent work and you're going to get this work frequently. And I think that kind of adds on to why people are able to enjoy manga on a much smaller scale. You don't have to worry about, reading 30, 40 pages in this new issue. You can just worry about reading 10 to 15. And you know that the art is consistent. Story is going to be moving at a pretty consistent pace as well. And you honestly know what you're going to get into every time. So if you know that you're not a fan of this, you don't have to worry about kind of sticking with this series. You can just drop it immediately. But if it's a series you're loving, then like One Piece again, for example, or even Naruto, you're knowing that you're going to get the same thing each time from the same writer. And it's pretty refreshing just knowing that you're going into a story that you love. But I truly think one of the biggest things manga has going over comics has to be faithful adaptations. Like we get a lot of comic book movies, TV shows, whatever you want to call it, video games, but more often than not, these are adaptations, so they don't have to be faithfully adapted. There are going to be some liberties that are taking place. How often do you hear people talk about an MCU character or storyline that they've changed? And that's okay. Sometimes changing those stories is cool, but a lot of times you get some pretty angry people who honestly, I don't blame them. You might be thinking like, "Man, I can't wait to see this character adapted." As soon as they show up on the screen, they're a joke maybe, or they're kind of the budding end of a joke, or they're just not truly like an involved character in the story, and it feels some type of way. Whereas in manga, because everything in anime is drawn and intentional, you're able to get pretty much beat for beat a faithful adaptation of what you read onto the screen. So, not only are they usually following the blueprint of these manga, so they never really have to kind of deviate from the storyline. They're able to chunk it out in a consistent time as well. So I know a lot of times in anime, especially nowadays, the anime seasons might take a bit to release, but at the very least, you know you're going to get some amazing animation, and the story is going to be exactly what you read. There might be some things they add, or maybe even a few things they tweak or remove, but at the very least, you're getting a lot more faithful adaptation than you would if you were somebody reading comics. So that's something you can't really beat either. But the final thing I have to talk about when it comes to manga is the fact that it has so much emotional depth. Maybe it's because these stories, like I mentioned, are written and drawn usually by the same person for a long extended period of time. But you honestly grow more attached to these characters in these stories. Heck, maybe it's because it has a definite ending. I don't know. But you really become involved with Naruto's story of becoming Hokage. You really want to see Goku become the strongest or Ash Ketchum being the best Pokemon trainer there is. Sometimes these manga are going on for decades within themselves, but you're really involved with these characters and these stories a lot more than you typically would be in comics. Maybe it has to do with an East or Western thing, how storytelling is told, but these stories always seem to have a little bit more emotional depth to them. You're able to enjoy these characters' stories a lot more. Honestly, feel when a character dies or something tragic happens. Because, like they mentioned in comics, no one really stays dead other than Gwen Stacy and Uncle Ben. Well, in most manga, when you're gone, you're gone. And those storylines hit hard. You feel the emotion that these characters are feeling. And more often than not, you know that the person who died on the page isn't coming back. They're honestly able to hit these emotional beats a lot easier than it would be for reading a comic. Sometimes I'll read a comic and the emotions don't really hit me all the time. Maybe it's because I've read so many, but I've seen so many storylines with a character like Green Arrow or Superman that, yeah, what I'm reading currently right now isn't really hitting home whenever something emotional happens. But if I'm reading a manga and maybe it's my first time, I'm reading some JJK and I see what happens on the next page, I'm probably going to be looking at that page for a couple of seconds before I move on because I'm just kind of awestruck on what I just actually read. So, with all that, yeah, I'm a big comic book fan and I'm a big manga fan. But we all came here to discuss which one is better. And like I mentioned in the beginning, it's probably not a fair comparison to compare the two, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to have to give it to manga. Maybe it's surprising that Itsuki Comics is giving manga the grace over comic books. I don't know. But all that I just mentioned towards the end, comic book industry is really something special. But man, manga, Jim Lee was right. Manga is really something special. I think they can both learn a lot from each other. They both have some great standing points that the other one could benefit from, but at the end of the day, I think the manga industry is just doing things a lot better than the comic book industry is doing. Especially when you're talking about, the big two, Marvel and DC. They have a lot that they can learn from not only the smaller independent comic studios, but from the manga industry as well. So maybe something like this could be a sign that new things are coming for the comic book industry. I'm always appreciating new change, especially when it's done correctly. But I don't know. I guess just wait and see. But with all this, I mean, these are my thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and just give the title to the manga industry for right now. But what about you? Are you more of a comic book fan, manga fan, somewhere in the middle, or don't care at all? But either way, go ahead and comment down below. What's your favorite comic book, or what's your favorite manga? You know what? Go ahead and throw in your favorite comic book character and manga character too. Why not? But as always, it's Keith Comics here, and thanks for watching.